At its peak, the Roman Empire controlled about 40% of the world's entire population. Think about what that actually means. If you were alive in 100 AD, there was almost a coin flip chance that you were living under Roman rule. Roman roads, Roman law, Roman money, Roman soldiers at your border keeping the chaos out. And then, over a few hundred years, it was just gone. Now, in school, they probably told you Rome fell because barbarians invaded, or because it got too big, or because the emperors went crazy. And those things happened, but they're not really the answer. They're symptoms. The actual reason Rome fell is something far more uncomfortable, something that sounds, honestly, a little too familiar. Because the thing that really killed Rome wasn't coming from outside the walls. It was already inside.
Let's start with the thing most people already know. Rome got too big. At its peak, the empire stretched from Scotland to Iraq, from the Sahara Desert to the Rhine River. And managing all of that with no phones, no internet, no cars, meant that by the time a message traveled from the edge of the empire to Rome, weeks had passed. Sometimes months. Decisions were made too slowly. Problems that needed immediate attention festered into crises before anyone in power even knew they existed. So in 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian did something drastic. He split the empire in two, an eastern half and a western half. Two emperors, two capitals, two armies. The idea was that smaller pieces would be easier to control. And here's the thing. For the East, it worked. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, survived for another 1,000 years. 1,000 years. It didn't fall until 1453. But the West was already too far gone.
But here's the part they don't really teach in school. The part that, when I first read it, made me put the book down. Rome was going broke. Keeping an empire that size defended required a massive military, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and soldiers need to be paid constantly. So Rome did what governments sometimes do when they run out of money. They started quietly making the money worth less. A Roman silver coin in 100 AD was about 90% pure silver. By 300 AD, that same coin was less than 5% silver. The rest was cheaper metal. They were essentially printing money, flooding the empire with currency that was worth less and less every year. Prices skyrocketed. Farmers couldn't afford supplies. Merchants stopped trusting Roman currency. Trade slowed down. Tax revenue collapsed because the economy was collapsing. And with less tax revenue, Rome had less money to pay soldiers. So they cut corners on the military too. It was a spiral. And once it started, it was almost impossible to stop.
And then there was the political situation, which was, to put it gently, a disaster. In the 3rd century alone, Rome had over 20 different emperors in just 50 years. 20. Most of them were assassinated. Some lasted only weeks. The empire had become a game where military generals fought each other for power instead of defending the borders. And every time a new emperor took over, loyalties shifted. Resources were redirected, and the whole system wobbled a little more. The people who were supposed to be running things were too busy fighting each other to notice that the walls were crumbling. By the time the actual barbarian invasions came, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Huns, Rome didn't fall because it was overpowered by some superior force. It fell because it was already hollowed out from the inside. The invasions were the final push on a door that was barely on its hinges. In 410 AD, a Visigoth leader named Alaric walked into Rome and sacked it. The first time in 800 years that an outside force had entered the city. And Romans who witnessed it said the same thing. Not that they were surprised it happened, but that they couldn't believe it had taken this long. Here's the part that sits with me. Historians have been debating why Rome fell for literally 1,500 years. Edward Gibbon wrote a 6-volume book about it in the 1770s. Scholars still argue about it today. And there's a reason the question won't go away. It's because the answer is uncomfortable. Rome didn't fall because of one bad emperor, or one barbarian army, or one bad decade. It fell because of a slow, quiet accumulation of problems that nobody wanted to deal with. Currency devalued, political trust
Trust eroded, infrastructure neglected, institutions hollowed out from within while everyone argued about who was in charge. No Roman citizen woke up one morning and decided to let it all fall apart. Every single one of them just made small decisions, small compromises, small choices to look away, until looking away was all anyone knew how to do. The most powerful civilization in human history didn't collapse in a day. It drifted slowly, almost invisibly, until one morning the gates were open and it was already over.
If you've ever wondered why this story keeps getting told over and over in every generation, I think that's why. It doesn't feel like ancient history. It feels like a warning. There's a lot more to this. The role of disease, the climate shifts that nobody talks about, the lead pipes that may have been slowly poisoning the entire ruling class. We'll get into all of that. But for now, if something in this video hit differently than you expected, drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, some of the conversations down there are better than the video. Next time, we're going back even further, before Rome, before Greece, before any empire we recognize, to ask one simple question: what did the very first human civilization actually look like? And the answer is going to surprise you.